appropriately, above us are images from various of Hüseyin's shows, which will be kind of rolling through as we talk. And I wanted to ask immediately, we're going to see many of the kind of amazing, spectacular shows you've put on, many of the fantastic outfits you've created specifically for the catwalk. And I was wondering, how do those outfits translate into what an ordinary woman can wear, what people can buy in your shop and wear in their everyday lives? What is the translation between those two things?
Well, for me, it's been always very important to be inspired by the initial pieces I would make. So I thought of the clothes initially as being quite monumental. And then the journey is that I try to strip them down and make them become, more wearable. For instance, the images you're seeing now is the monument, so to speak, and then the coat that comes from that actually is one of our signature pieces, for example. So it's been this correlation between, let's say, creativity and business, I would say, commerce.
I mean, do you feel, when you say that, it almost sounds like you're compromising the clothes to appear on the body, but do you really feel that? Do you feel that?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. I think that I'm kind of a playful minimalist, where I think, clothes could be a very empowering and very, let's say, confidence-building experience. And even when I design the most simple piece, there's always some angle to it that excites me. So I think that you can re-punctuate the body, you can re-empower the body with clothes quite well. And because I've been very interested in also roles of women, throughout my life, I think it's been a very natural gravitation for me.
Mm-hmm. And when for example, I'm wearing one of your dresses now, and when I wear your dresses, am I a carrier of your ideas? How is the kind of my identity in the dress mixing with your concept?
I would like to think that you are not the carrier of my ideas. I'd like to think that you've personalized it and made it your own, and I'm perhaps an ingredient provider. So I don't think of it as hopefully taking over your personality, but I'd like to think of it as something that you make your own.
And when you see pictures of women wearing your dresses, for example, celebrities wearing your dresses, how do you feel about that kind of communication in the world?
Well, I never really sought out to dress celebrities. They've come to us naturally. And I think of it as exciting because you reach new audiences. And we are living in a digital era, in a popularist era. And why not think of it as something fun? Because I used to really cringe at the idea of celebrities wearing my stuff because there were a lot of profiles that I didn't take that seriously. But then I also think, why not? I'm quite open.
What made you cringe at one point? I'm quite interested by that.
You would have profiles that are very different to the image of the woman that I'm interested in. But you've got to be open if you're a designer. You have to be open to who wears your clothes.
Right. Do you feel you may have changed with age, mellowed with time?
I think that, yes, and I've had different priorities over the years. Our business has grown, quite well, so I've had different preoccupations. So I started to not think about those things so much.
Do you think it's related to broader changes in the fashion industry?
Well, we're living in one of the biggest differences, I'd say, from the mid-90s when I started, is obviously the arrival of digital age. I am a designer pre-digital, and then now, obviously, we are in digital. So I've seen how fashion is consumed based on that difference. And I feel very much that the digital era has made fashion more democratic, but it's also made it much more throwaway. I think it means also that editors are less able to make you just seem avant-garde because people can see all your work rather than through the eyes of an editor who would have used your more showpieces, let's say, to create interest in the pages. So I think I've seen that transition happen to me and to my peers as well. So I feel very much that I've gone through that journey. And of course, the celebrity culture and the idea of the conglomerates taking over brands. We are very much, let's say, an independently minded brand that had to survive on our own through various also consultancies and projects, and of course our own brand has 8 collections a year. But yes, I think it's been, I've seen the change, and I think it's exciting as well.
Is it harder for an independent brand to survive in these days? I mean, are there pressures on you to take
I think
investment?
that you make quicker decisions because you don't have to answer to an investor, but you probably, you know, you can't, your reach is more limited, of course, but yes, let's see, there is a transition happening right now. We're in the midst of something, so we'll see that maybe we will be working with someone. We've started the process. It's exciting days, yeah.
And one of the recent developments, I mean, we've known each other for a while, and I wrote an essay in your book, which was an absolute pleasure, because you were a long-standing hero of mine before I got to meet you.
Thank you.
But a few years ago, you opened the shop.
Yeah.
And actually, I feel I've got to know you better through the shop. And particularly when I picked up this dress, for example, we were just passing by on a Saturday, and there you were inside, so I could just come in and see you. And I was wondering, could you talk about the role of bricks and mortar now in this digital world?
Absolutely. So I think that for a designer to have a store is an amazing response mechanism, because you see how people react to the clothes, you get to know your customers one-to-one. At this day and age, it's really about serving your customers. I mean, I've been doing this for 22, 23 years, and the biggest pleasure I take is when I see normal people wear my clothes. And to get to know them through our shop is a real privilege, because essentially I would have never got to know people in that way. And as you know, you've hosted dinners for us in our store. We got to meet other people and, you know, built a new client base as well, gradually. And for me, I think it's that kind of intimacy, and also me explaining processes. I think me talking about the cut of the garments, there's a lot of work that goes into these clothes. You know, we spend our life in fittings. And I think that the shop has become an amazing platform for that, absolutely.
And will there just be one shop, or will there be many shops?
Well, that's the plan, that we want to open more shops, obviously, in other cities, and we also want to open shops, you know, shops within shops, so in department stores as well. And yes, we have a whole new strategy on the way. Yeah.
I mean, knowing your work really for the full sweep of it, really becoming a fan really from the get-go in the mid-90s, I've seen that there are 2 constant themes in your work. I mean, and I would sort of say that it's technology and identity, which maybe picks up on the idea of you wanting to be an anthropologist, or being an anthropologist in none other guise. I was wondering if you recognise those themes, and do you feel you're telling one consistent story through all your collections?
So definitely I'm interested in identity and let's say human behavior, because I mean, this is my natural curiosity, but also because I was, you know, I'm from the Turkish part of Cyprus and I was raised in London. It meant that I was exposed to all these differences from a young age, and I became very curious about how cultures evolve and how you can have, you know, bicultural, tricultural, quadruple characters. Therefore, identity has been fueled, I think, very much by this exposure, combined with my natural curiosity. So I would say that, yes, I try to kind of use my work as a means to learn, but while I'm learning, I'm also trying to propose new images of the body and create new contexts, and in a way do it through storytelling.
And since we're in Istanbul, I mean, can we talk particularly about the kind of Turkish identity and your kind of role as a Turkish Cypriot designer, not Turkish. Well, but do you think there is a specific Turkish identity in fashion?
Well, I think that it's, for me, very cliche to think that Turkish fashion has to be using Ottoman designs or the fairs or this or that. Like, I actually genuinely think, from my time that I've spent here, that Turkish designers here are global designers. They're really using global influences. You know, they really are aware of what's going on around the world. I no longer think that a geography has to kind of have a very particular kind of angle on what their identity should be, fashion-wise. I think that also, you know, through digital era and exposure and the global environment, I think it's just about being a good designer wherever you are from. And actually, the good thing in Turkey is that there is production here, there is opportunities here, there's a lot of entrepreneurial people. I think a lot could be done here.
looking at the business of fashion itself, thinking about the future, I mean, you say you produce 8 collections a year. I mean, that seems like an incredible rate of productivity.
Yeah.
And I mean, I sometimes feel it's a bit like a wheel going faster and faster to the point where the spokes blur and appear to stay still. And in a way, can fashion sustain its rhythm, or do you think people are eventually going to resist that rhythm and try a different model?
I think that the idea that designers have to produce so many collections a year is terrible. I think it's because there's so much product out there already. I think there's going to be a backlash. I mean, I would love to be one of the first people that does this, really, that I almost want to do couture and just maybe one ready-to-wear collection. We also have menswear now as well for the last few years. But yes, I think there'll be a backlash because how much can you carry on in this way? It's crazily expensive. I think people are oversaturated with product. Who needs so much product? I mean, I don't really know.
And what form would the backlash take? Can we
I'd say couture, bespoke. This is the future. Absolutely, because I think in one hand we're having the high street that emulates the work of what's happening in fashion, emulate the designers in a way and offer them affordable versions. And then maybe more and more it's going to be couture, but also it's going to be customization. I think people are going to be able to really design their own clothes very soon. We will become even more so ingredient providers.
That's interesting. So, in a sense, you're saying you'll provide the couture end and allow high streets to just kind of do the mainstream end. Is that how
I'd like to not allow them, but they do it anyway. So,
right. So that's just
high street really obviously cannibalizes the work we're doing because they can sell your ideas for much cheaper. It's awful. But then it's not because it means people can afford things, but the high street can actually collaborate with designers more, and it could become much more of a win-win situation. Yeah.
Right. So that's, in a way, the ideal scenario was there's Hüseyin Çağlayan couture and a high street line.
Well, not my high street line, so to speak, but maybe, or maybe it could be our line, who knows? But we have done that before, where we've had this sort of more second line approach. I think it's a combination of, let's say, going more bespoke because it's more specialist, and I'd say maybe technology will provide means for people to also maybe even print their own clothes, because it's already happening.
One thing we spoke about beforehand was people have expectations of the life of the fashion designer that you don't necessarily think are true. Can you describe what you think the biggest misconception people have about the life of a fashion designer?
People think that fashion designers have this glamorous lifestyle and they're out every night and they're doing, they hang out with celebrities, and part of that is true. I think definitely, I mean, I've got to meet people that I would have never met if I didn't do this job. But reality of being a designer is that it's an industrial process, and it's a very expensive industrial and difficult process. And actually a very tiring process, and it requires a lot of traveling. You've got to speak languages. I speak 4 languages. I use it for work. It's not even that I just learn it for the sake of it. It's really for practical reasons. And basically, it's a very difficult life. And I think that a lot of people do it for the lifestyle. I certainly didn't. I did it because I had passion and I had ideas. But yes, I think there's definitely a massive misconception, absolutely.
And what advice would you give to a youngster wanting to work in fashion?
I would say that they should open their mind to not only being a designer. There are so many other roles in fashion. In fact, stylists and photographers are actually the kings of our industry. They're the biggest money earners, and we provide their ingredients, so to speak. So I would say that they should really consider other aspects of fashion that is very lucrative right now.
And is that something that's changed over time? Do you think the stylist is becoming a more important ingredient, and is that a problem?
I think they're a brilliant ingredient. I just think that maybe, they're given too much status at times, and I really enjoy working with my stylist. But I'd say no, I would, as long as everyone knows their role and their position, I think that there's room for everyone.
Thank you. I noticed that the time is counting down, so I'm just going to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of you.